Welcome everybody to our second, okay, I'm going to scratch that start again.
Yeah, it's all right. Don't worry, does somebody edit this for you?
I hope so, they better. We'll start anew now. 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to the second of Human Synergistics International Women's Month, where we shine a light on some amazing women. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of where we work and where you're watching this webinar. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So today we focus our spotlight on leadership. It's important that as we move forward that we have equal participation of women at the table where decisions are made. And we're really lucky today to have Tanya Deans with us, who is the president of Hanes Australasia, the name behind some of Australia's most recognised apparel and lifestyle brands, including Bond, Champion, Bras and Things, and Sheridan. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us. It seems that as President and Chief Executive of Hanes Australasia, you're a member of what is now quite a small group of 18% of CEOs are women. So I think everybody's going to be very keen to hear about your career journey and your learnings and all the steps that led you to where you are today. So let's begin with, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the journey through time.
Thanks, Corinne, and good morning or good evening, everyone, depending on the time of day you're watching this. Yeah, it's great to be here and to share my journey. Look, I've been going at this this leadership thing and kind of moulding my career as much as you can mould your career for some 30 odd years, so quite a long time. So, you know, I started, you know, with a real kind of ambition. All I wanted to do was be a marketing manager. So I went and did a commerce degree at University of New South Wales, and left there and went, yep, I'm going to become a marketing manager, and that is my ultimate goal. And so I joined a division of Unilever and spent a bit of time there, and you know, that was an important first step towards my journey, I guess. But it was a very male-dominated environment, and I probably witnessed and experienced some things that, as a young graduate, you know, I was really surprised about, because I kind of think that I was one of the first generations that was really encouraged and told that, you know, you can have a really wonderful career as a woman. And so I did leave with those expectations in mind and saw some things that kind of shocked and surprised me, and so I then made the move to join what was then known as Pacific Dunlop, which had a swathe of consumer brands, and a lot of them were female-centric brands like Burley. And it really felt like I was coming home, because I walked into an environment that was far more gender balanced. I had a passion for and an interest in the product. And so I kind of really moved through the organisations. I've been with the business, Pacific Dunlop, which became Pacific Brands, which was then spun off into private equity, and then, you know, kind of floated sort of about 10 or 12 years ago, survived the GFC in the organisation, and then we were acquired by Hanes. So in that journey, I've moved from various different roles up, sideways. Some roles could have even been perceived as a bit of a downward step to land at the present role that I'm currently in. So I've had the privilege of working for an organisation that, as I said, has moved from, you know, a publicly listed company to private equity, back to publicly listed, to bought by, large conglomerate. I've been part of acquiring companies, divestment of companies. So it's been a full gamut. So I've been really, really privileged to land somewhere that is really dynamic and has had a culture, through strong leadership that's really kind of evolved with times.
One of the things that interests me, especially about leaders, is whether you knew you wanted to be a leader. Like cast your mind back 35 years ago, you went to, as a marketing grad. At what point did it occur to you? Did you always want to be a leader, or did it emerge?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to be a leader. I'm sort of naturally, I have the, and I'll call it this, I have in leadership the perceived benefit of being an extrovert. I think sometimes extroverts get a slightly, what I call easier journey, right? Because, we're kind of so we're outward, and I think it's kind of from the outside looking in, it looks like it's something that you'd want to do and you'd be happy with doing it. But I've also worked under some amazing, naturally introverted leaders as well. So I think I always wanted to be a leader, but to this extent, I probably, as I said, I wanted to be a marketing manager, all those years ago, and that probably in my mind looked like I might have been leading, three or four people, and so it probably, the scale of it looked quite different back then to where I found myself right now.
Yeah, interesting. And if you look back over your journey in terms of your development as a leader, what have been the key points along the way, I guess? So have there been kind of milestones where, looking back on it now, you think, yes, that was a formative moment?
Yeah. I think the key milestones, I mean, the tap on the shoulder and here's a bigger job are always amazing milestones, right?
Yeah.
But I actually think the more powerful milestones are the ones that are perceived as either the step backs or the sideways steps.
Oh, okay.
For me. Yeah. So, I liken a career journey as, you get in a car and you set off thinking that you're going to, maybe let's just call it a Sunday drive, and you think you're going to land somewhere and you actually land somewhere completely different to where you thought you were setting out to see. And like that Sunday, like that journey in the car, you come to traffic lights and roundabouts and dead ends and you get lost, and you're cruising on the freeway, and a career is completely the same. And so, I've had a couple of moments where I've had a different tap on my shoulder and, hey, Tanya, we want you to step away from what you're doing and start doing something quite different. And, at times I've been a bit like, I'm not sure what that is. Is that a backward step? Is that a sideways step? It's certainly not a forward step. But I think the 2 or 3 times that has happened to me, I've in hindsight, that's been incredibly important, because for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've broadened my skills, because it was a couple of instances where I've sort of moved outside of if you like, the marketing and sort of brand management side of what I was doing into kind of category and product. I've moved from the world of color and movement into spreadsheets. And and that's been, they were really, really important steps for me. Or I've had to manage very different team dynamics, and the experience of managing a different team dynamic has also been really, really powerful. Or I've had to manage brands or smaller businesses that aren't quite as public, if you like. They fly under the radar a little bit more, and so I've moved from running brands that have had all the attention in the world to brands that have had very little attention, and vice versa. So kind of this journey in the car, those dead ends, or, you know, going around the roundabout about 10 times because you're not sure what exit you're going to pop out at, have probably been some of the more formative times, and have really challenged me, you know, personally, challenged my resilience, I guess, and really forced me to think, about those moments differently, like take myself outside of what perceives to be, you know, that I perceive is in front of me, and think about it really differently. Like, what can I gain from this experience? And once I think you make that mind shift switch, it actually unveils itself for you. That moment, you know, becomes evident, and you then get all of the benefit. But, you know, for as long as, and I've done this a number of times too, I've shut it down and I've hated every moment of it, and I've been blind to the experience, and I've been blind to the learning. So it's a really kind of important, it's been an important thing for me to just always pause, step back, and kind of go, what does this mean?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And because you, building on your car analogy, you could have pivoted, you could have decided to take the exit, and you didn't, you stayed. And I wonder, so I guess the mind shift you talked a little bit would have been part of staying. Is that, you know, were there other things that allowed you to see it from a different angle? How did you, so part of it is you having to change your mindset. Were there other things that you drew on, other people that you drew on to try and see things differently?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, family are always good because they can always see they see an alternative that you can't see. And, you know, look, I've been really fortunate because I've had really great people in my corner who, you know, have really regularly kind of said to me, you know, stay the course, and probably shared with me other people who have done something very, very similar, or shared their own individual story, just to say, yeah, this has happened to me too, and it's kind of worthwhile. Not everything's worthwhile hanging around for. Like, I think if anything's, it's a really bad situation and you see no way out of it. But I think for me, it was having people in my corner to go, hey, have you thought about it differently? Or, you know, here's other people that have done something very similar, and they've popped out, you know, because your journey is just, it's not always vertical. And you just got to see those people around you and seek those stories out, which you know, again, I was able to do, and could see that you know, this is just a moment in time.
So I guess it's really about making it kind of a more dispassionate or a bit of an objective assessment, taking some soundings, really digging deep, and looking at, is there anything here for me to learn? Before I decide to move on.
That's exactly right.
So one of the questions we've been asking our guests is, thinking about all of that and where you are at now, what would be 3 things that would give us sort of most insight into you as a person or as a leader?
Look, I think the first thing is, like, I was always a bit the class clown when I was younger, and I'm still absolutely the class clown. You know, I'm I've just decided at a point in time that I was always going to be authentically me, and not do leadership the way others do. I think everybody's leadership journey is their own journey, and you've got to find your own way of doing it, but, you know, just be you. I think for a long time we probably all thought that, you know, to run a big organization, you know, you had to have the inner mongrel, and I don't know that that's true. It's not true for me. There's this, you know, maybe I do have a little bit of an inner mongrel, but it's a nice inner mongrel, you know. So I think that's the first thing that I'd say about me. I also the second thing I'd say is that you know, somebody once said to me, if you're going to be successful at leadership, you need to give 100% of yourself at the time that you're in it. And so, you know, juggling motherhood and a career, I sort of made that conscious decision that, you know, when I was at work, I was going to be really 100% at work. Sometimes I've not been successful at this, mind you, but it's something that's really guided me. And then when I'm at home, I'm going to be 100% at home. And so I've sort of tried to really create that pretty strong demarcation between my, you know, kind of home life and being a mum with my career. And so I'm able to kind of separate the two quite well. And as I said, it's not easy, and I've mucked it up a few times. But one particular story I do kind of recall that I was on a deadline for something that I had to get out, and I decided that I would go home, collect my then 3-year-old and bring her into the office and try and sit her in a corner whilst I churned through the deadline. And this is at a time, this is at a time when, you know, there was no such thing as Teams, and, you know, your personal laptop wasn't really a thing, right? So you had to do everything at work. And I got so engrossed in what I was doing, little did I know that my 3-year-old had removed all her clothes and was streaking through the office. It was kind of one of those moments where I went, maybe that is not a good time to actually blend motherhood and work. So I've had those things. So that real separation is probably the second thing. And the third thing is that, you know, I really kind of like to, you know, I think compassion and vulnerability is a really important thing, which flows both ways. So, you know, not being afraid to show the human side of who you are, you know, incredibly important as a leader, because I think we have to set up an expectation that, you know, to sort of land yourself at the top of you know, the top of your game. It doesn't mean you're superhuman. You have flaws, you know, you have vulnerabilities, we all have our challenges and our individual crosses to bear. And to actually share that, I think sort of removes the pedestal, because I think the pedestal is not useful, because number one, you become inaccessible as a human being, and that's not really what true leadership is. And number two, you create an expectation that, you know, it's an impossible journey to get to. I mean, I'm a pretty ordinary individual. There's nothing really that extraordinary about me, and so it doesn't take extraordinary human beings to become leaders. If you're really authentic to yourself, and you are really, you know, you are yourself, and you show yourself in your full capacity. I think it's really important.
So it's about authenticity. Be authentic. Be who you are. Do you?
Yeah. Do you?
Do you establish some boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah.
And compassion and vulnerability.
Yeah.
As you talked about that, Tanya, I wondered, as a leader, especially if you're in, I was going to say, especially in male-dominated environments, because I know that very often in my career as a senior leader, I was the only woman around the table. And I wondered, are there times, vulnerability is something that leaders seem to find difficult to do, to be. And I think Brene Brown has helped to shine a light on the importance of how it helps. Have there been times when you've kind of needed to face into a moment where you're in, and this is probably a difficult question, but it occurred to me, in two minds, where should I share this, should I not? And, you know, how do you work out, or is it you just kind of, have there been those moments?
Yeah.
Or is it that drive to be authentic is stronger?
Yeah, look, I think there's, you know, that's a constant battle, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant battle. I think when you jump into a new role, we all are confronted with, some of us are, really confronted with it, the imposter syndrome. And, I've had situations where I go, I really don't know what I'm doing here. So I fake it till I make it, or do I actually go, you know what, I'm out of my depth? I'm not sure, because you want to instill confidence in people, but look, this is a new experience for me too. I don't have all the answers. And so, and that has a powerful impact on your team when you kind of go, I don't have all the answers, and I need you guys to work on this with me. It's a great development moment for your team. So yeah, look, it's not that I've found that at all easy. That's been something that I've grappled with all the time. To what degree am I honest? Then I think in other instances, where I've dealt with health issues amongst my family, and chronic health issues, and I've kept that largely private. But I think at the point where you come to terms with it yourself, when you're comfortable in it, then I think, for me, then I've gone, okay, so then how do I turn this into a moment where others who might be going through a similar situation could benefit from hearing about how it's impacted me and how I've dealt with it. So, recently because I've just taken on this role as president, and I had to do a town hall to my team just to introduce, I had a fireside chat with my head of people and culture, and there were 700 people on the line. And I decided that part of that fireside chat I would share the journey that I've been through with my daughter, who has chronic mental health challenges, and just some of the struggles that I've been through trying to manage this thing called career, and a demanding illness, and the kind of the emails and the calls and the texts and the corridor kind of messages of support and thanks for sharing that has been probably the most poignant part of stepping into this role. That moment of being vulnerable and open up has probably had the most powerful impact of anything that I've done. And I think for many others, they've kind of gone, I've got my own challenges, they're different to yours, but it was just so fabulous to hear that you've had times where things haven't really gone to plan, and at times you've had to make some forced choices around what you're going to prioritise in that moment.
So I guess that's what you were saying about being accessible and human in your leadership, so that people know that you're human.
Yeah.
If you knowing what you know now, and you're about to give some advice to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you have given her and others at that very young entry into work life?
Yeah. Look, I think I'd try and see the kind of the positives or the good in every moment, in every confronting moment. It's okay to sink into the why me, but then pull yourself out of it and see the positive outcomes of that confronting moment. I think the other thing that I would say is, sometimes there's a role for patience, and there's a role for impatience, and find, kind of ask yourself, is this a moment for me to be patient, or is this a moment for me to be impatient? And I think the third thing is that I would have told myself that I have far more, if you like, credits in the bank to challenge the status quo. I think if you're if you really focus on your constructive behaviours, you can challenge things constructively, such that most recipients will open up and take that feedback and at least listen to what you've got to say. So, you know, you've got much more ability to be the counterpoint to a belief or a thought than you think you do.
I love that.
And just be a little bit more, you know, again, if you're constructive in your style, be more courageous.
Wonderful. So I love that. So there's a bit of face into the moment, the difficult moments, and look for what the positive outcome might be that emerges from that. I love that idea of, you know, there are moments to be patient, and then there are moments for impatience, and which is that kind of idea that you don't have to take everything. You don't have to accept everything. There are times when you need to challenge. And the idea that if you are constructive, then you've got a lot of credit in the bank to actually be courageous and be brave, and actually, I like that idea of being the counterpoint.
Yeah.
You know, how you might be able to make the difference if you're able to be constructive. So fantastic advice. Speaking of, you know, which, and thinking about women more generally in the workforce, what kind of gains do you think we've made, and what more work is there to be done, and where?
Yeah, look, you know, again, in a 30-year career, I've seen a lot of, you know, fantastic gains. I think, you know, it's wonderful to see a lot of workplaces now really setting up flexibility to enable, you know, women to particularly balance that challenging road of being, you know, parent and career person. So I think it's fantastic to see a lot more flexibility around that. You know, I think, again, you know, it's awesome to see. You know, I think that we're seeing a lot more women, again, kind of post having children, stay in the workforce. You know, I think that, you know, generation or two ago, you know, that would be the exit point, and they'd never come back. And by the time they're ready to come back, they've lost their confidence. So it's really wonderful to see women sticking with it and continuing their careers, because, you know, they've got so much more to give. So, you know, I think there's been some awesome inroads, and we are seeing more women, you know, at the big table, which is amazing. But no doubt there is a long way to go, and you know, I think a lot of it would also probably sit amongst women themselves. You know, I think sometimes we are our own worst enemy, because we kind of are very good at convincing ourselves that, oh no, it's probably not my time, and, you know, we're just sort of naturally far less inclined to believe in our ability to kind of to be able to do certain things. So I think we've all got to get better at encouraging ourselves, but most importantly, cheerleading each other. You know, hey, why not? You know, there are plenty that have gone there. Let's find you somebody else who may have trodden a very similar path. We can share kind of, you know, we all need to learn and share our own tips and tricks around how we've got through it. So I think we've, you know, I'd really sort of encourage all of those amazing women and men who are listening to this call around how can you cheerlead each other, through it, and particularly cheerlead, I think, through that period in many women's lives, not all women, but many women's lives, where they are doing that very, very challenging and difficult struggle between being mothers and being career women. It's a tough time.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. And, you know, of course, as much as things have changed, women are still doing a large part of the unpaid care at homes. And so it's a really important call out that we support each other and provide that encouragement to find the balance and the rhythm, you know, what that means to take care of self, to take care of family, and be able to be a effective leader as well. One of the things that I was thinking of, and you're talking about, you know, cheerleading and each other and supporting each other. One of the things that I think we start to see changing a little bit is the norms and the assumptions and the mindsets in the community about women. I think we've got a long way to go. I was preparing a presentation, and one of my bugbears is often the stock images. If you put in leaders, the leaders that have male images versus the images of women are quite different. It's quite interesting. And I guess, you know, Hanes has a number of brands that are really either apparel or, you know, or bras and things, female centric. And I wondered what's informed your marketing of women and to women? How have you approached that? Because it's the real counterpoint to creating or reinforcing a different view.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, I think, you know, a few years ago we recognised that, you know, we have a very important role to start to break down, you know, the stereotypes, and that's, you know, ageism, you know, sexual inclination, body type, ethnicity. So we sort of saw that a few years ago and really made a very conscious effort to start to, you know, broaden that talent choice, particularly. You know, start to introduce the concept of, you know, kind of everyday people who had really interesting stories. It wasn't just about how they looked, but really, really interesting stories, and you know, showcase them. We sort of probably, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years ago, we introduced the sort of the policy that we won't retouch anybody who we photograph. So so we don't actually remove any of the perceived flaws, because we sort of see them as being human beings, as I sort of touched on before. So so we've been sort of on this journey for quite a while now, and you know, I think it's just so incredibly important, particularly for our children. I think kids who are, you know, it's the children who are probably under 10 that we can have the biggest impact on. For the rest of us, we are somewhat conditioned by the imagery that we're seeing, but for that next generation of kids, like, we have a duty, and that's the way we've seen it. We have a duty to be honest and raw and authentic and realistic, and actually hold the mirror up to how people genuinely are. And the kind of the response we've had to that has been amazing. Now, you can still be yourself, right? You can still, and when I say yourself, I'm just saying your brands still need to be ultimately everything that they are. So, you know, you mentioned, yeah, Bonds has been going at this for quite a while. You mentioned Bras and Things, which was probably, you know, barreling down a path of stereotype. And, you know, Bras and Things has a sexy, playful brand positioning, and we didn't want to lose that, but we can broaden sexy and playful and be, you know, and make it for everyone, and have talent and situations that are honest, but that are not honest, that are real, you know.
Yeah, not
so
just one thing.
Not just one thing, a multitude of things, because that's what women are. We are incredibly multidimensional, and it's hard to bucket it into kind of one group. So we've been doing that for a while. We've had amazing feedback. It's really unlocked so much for us as a brand, and as a collection of brands. And but we've got a long way to go.
It's great to hear, though, isn't it? It's great to hear that it can unlock a success, that you don't have to stick to the kind of mainstream, what's often been sexualized view or, stereotype of women. And it's challenging that. And so I guess on that note, thinking about, the International Women's Day slogan for the year, it was choose the challenge. And just by way of wrapping up, I'm interested in what's the one message that, what's an important message that you'd want to share with everyone who's watching the webinar?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it's choose to challenge is an internal thing. Like, choose to challenge yourself, choose to challenge your thinking. Choose to challenge how you're limiting yourself. Choose to challenge how you look at a situation. I think it is, because I think that the strength and our ability to really push forward will actually start with all of us, and I think we are also governed by our own stereotypes. Like, that's the place to start. And then I think we're in a powerful position to push that out and start to make that change. Because if you don't believe something yourself, it's very, very difficult to make things happen. So choose to challenge yourself and your thinking and what's holding you back.
Yeah, and then you're really challenging that bias, your own bias, unconscious.
Your own bias, yeah.
And then kind of cause that ripple effect, but you've got to convince yourself first.
Yeah, you do. You do. If you haven't convinced yourself, you will not be authentic when you're pushing others to do things. So so challenge yourself, start to reframe it, think about it differently. And then that's the launching point to then take it more broadly outside of here.
Love it. Thank you so much, Tanya. It's been great to spend some time with you and to have you share your practical wisdom around, your own journey, and also, I guess, some of the broader issues that we're facing. It's been fantastic to have you. Thanks you so much.
Thanks, Corinne. Thank you.